we're here with Dave Campbell. He is the color analyst for the Edmonton Elks on Shed 880. It's a pleasure having you on today's episode. We've talked before. How's it going out in Edmonton?
Well, it's been, I would say, optimism, energy, hope. It's just on, it's probably a 10, I would say, which is a little intimidating because, it's, they really have, this team really has to come through with wins on the field. But, compared to what we're used to around here, the excitement level is great with, Chris Morris first being hired as the president and CEO, then Ed Hervey, the VP of football ops and GM, and then you got Mark Killam as the head coach, and then Tre Ford. And, it's been a lot of positive momentum for this football team, which they desperately need. Now it's just wins on the field. That's what has to happen now. That's the next step. So, it's only mid-January. There's a long way to go in the off season, but the fans are excited, and it's nice to feel some positive vibes here for once.
Yeah, I mean, you got new ownership, whole new management and upper management structure. Talking about Ed Hervey, the comments about Eugene during the winter meetings, what was your take on it? Because I kind of read the articles. I listened to it a little bit. Personally, it kind of just makes sense given the current Edmonton structure. What's your take on it? Do you think he was kind of out of line or kind of on point with who he is as a person? And do you think Eugene Lewis will be back in Edmonton for 2025?
Yeah, so let's just start with Ed. Ed is honest. He's honest. I wouldn't even say, well, maybe to a fault. Maybe in the past you would say to a fault, because I think there were some missteps maybe with his first run, but overall, Ed is an honest individual who has learned a lot about the GM position, has learned a lot about constructing a football team, and he's going to give it to you straight, whether you like it or not. He's going to be honest with you, and I think that's what I appreciate about Ed Hervey in this version of Ed Hervey compared to the first time around. Is he's trying to be clear and concise and honest, so there's no gray area with him. Like the comments, I think they were more about the priorities of the football team and a salary he's willing to pay a certain position. Chris Jones paid first Kenny Lawler over $300,000 in 22, and then Eugene Lewis $320,000 for 23 and 24. That's just the way he did it. Okay. Not every GM is going to do that. Some GMs will. We obviously saw Chris Jones willing to do that. I always thought the roster construction from Chris Jones a little baffling to me because I think it caused him and forced him to make decisions in other areas of the football team. And he would never say that he was wrong or regret the decision. But look at last year. They started the year with 2 veterans on defense. 2. That's it. That's all they had. They had Lucius Purifoy as the safety and Miles Morgan, the middle linebacker, who was going into his 4th season. So that caused Chris Jones naturally to dress a young lineup. The defensive line struggled at times last year, even though they had a couple good stories on there. The back end was hit and miss. Ed Hervey is simply saying, my priorities are improving the offensive line, the defensive line. He wants to improve that secondary as far as, let's maybe bring in a vet or 2. And he looks at the receiver position and says, this is not a position where you spend $300,000 on, because it doesn't make sense to him. And he played the position too. He pointed that out. He played it, so he values it. But in this league, as far as Ed Hervey's concerned, your line play is the most important. Well, first it's your quarterback. Get a good quarterback, you pay him. Then you protect that quarterback. And then on defense, you get after the quarterback. And, it's clear that the defense is an area that he wants to improve. So he said he had the receiver market has to reset. And we'll see what happens here. So Eugene Lewis isn't a priority right now. He's going to take care of those areas we talked about, D-line, O-line, secondary, and then we'll see how the market shapes up after that. Will Eugene Lewis be back? It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on what another team is willing to pay for him prior to, the Elks being ready to talk to him. And, will the market, as far as dollar figure, come down enough that Ed Hervey is willing to jump into the fray and say, okay, Gino, let's talk here. So I think the comments were more about the positional need and the value of the positional need, and the priorities that are set aside or that are in front of Ed Hervey, than it wasn't anything personal to Gino. Gino's a fantastic receiver who had an excellent season after a slow start. Set a team record for consecutive touchdowns by a receiver, and then tied a team record for consecutive touchdowns, period. And he's in the running for the league record, right? So it'll be exciting to see him do it in green and gold, but not at the expense of the other needs of the football team and where the money needs to, the allocation of the dollars to those positions.
Yeah, and that all makes sense, right? Like you got to build a 53 or a 40-man roster. It's not just one or two players. It's not the NBA, right, where you can build a team off two players and hope for the best. Talk about quarterback position. Obviously, they extended Ford for 3 years. I think that kind of surprised a lot of the CFL community. I know I was kind of taken aback. I thought he might have, especially at the time of the signing, figured he might have wanted to see what his market was, but maybe he saw the writing on the wall with all the other quarterback moves and thought it would be best case to stay in Edmonton. But the big one is the trade for McLeod Bethel-Thompson to Montreal for, Cody Fajardo, who won Grey Cup MVP in 2023 with Montreal, has been a starter in this league for the Rough Riders. How has that impacted the team, or how do you think that's going to impact the team come training camp? And how long of the leash is Ford expected to have? Winning's the end of the game. How long are they going to wait if they start, 1-3, 1-4, 2-4, before they maybe move on to Cody if Ford isn't winning?
Well, I think, let's go back to the end of the season. I think at season's end, I think if you were to tell me Tre Ford has played his last game as an Edmonton Elk, I would have believed you. I think it was just trending that way, even though I think, G. Roy Simon as the interim GM and Jerry Jackson, the interim head coach, had put the organization kind of back on the rails and pointed them in the right direction. I don't think it was enough for Tre Ford because perhaps he just felt the two were too closely associated to Chris Jones and his regime. And I always thought his best chance of being a starter was in Edmonton, but thinking back on it now, if those two would have stayed, I don't know if he would have stayed, right? So Ed Hervey, who interviewed for the job, of course, and got the job, he campaigned. Part of the pitch was Tre Ford. He wanted to work with Tre Ford. I think he understands that ownership in Larry Thompson values Tre Ford a lot. He knows the fan base values Tre Ford a lot. The one thing we haven't seen yet, Shane, is Tre Ford be given the keys as number one to see how he reacts to that. So in that respect, I'm happy Tre is getting that opportunity because I think it's time to find out if he can take that next step. And we have seen, good from Tre Ford, and we have seen not so good from Tre Ford. And I know he's 99 as a starter. There are people who would tell you that he wins against certain teams and he loses against certain teams. He definitely can play against the teams that are kind of around the Elks or a little bit, that 500 type team. But when it comes to the Bombers and the Lions and that sort of thing, the upper echelon teams of the league, he's really struggled against them, right? So now it's about taking the next step. Jordan Maximic's a key hire, in my opinion, and that will be very important for those two, that they can actually, later on in the offseason, meet in the building, because Tre's moved here with his family. And I think that's a great move for Tre. But the other move is what you mentioned is Cody Fajardo. So they needed a stopgap or a mentor or someone who is, a reliable number two. And Cody Fajardo was, I know, very high on my list as veteran quarterbacks that I felt that the Elks would target, and that was their number one choice too. So the trade happened. I mean, I don't think McLeod Bethel Thompson, as admirable of a job that he did, and I think he got too much criticism for the record because I think he played well enough to win the other phase, which is the defense. As far as those 10 losses, didn't do enough to win. And I know it's a team game, but $500,000 isn't going to work, right? So he got Tre Ford at a good number at 365. He got a $100,000 signing bonus, which he worked into the 24 cap. So that's $100,000 he can work with. I'm not sure what Cody Fajardo's number comes in, but he's not getting the $200,000 bonus. So he's probably getting somewhere near what maybe Tre Ford's getting this year, or maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. But I would say probably in that ballpark 265 area. So that's great work by Ed Hervey, and he gets that in the 24 cap. So that's good. Whatever signing bonus or whatever the signing bonus would have been, I'm sure there was one in there. So that's like you got starter money to two quarterbacks. So that means you can branch out and do other things with the club. So Cody Fajardo is. I feel bad for him because it's a victim of circumstance with Davis Alexander being the starter now, and I think it does make sense for Montreal to go with the kind of the younger, cheaper option, and I think he will benefit. Tre Ford will benefit from Cody Fajardo in different ways than McLeod Bethel Thompson, who I think was a really good benefit for Tre Ford. But now you got a guy who is he won a Grey Cup recently. He's got the scramble ability along with the throwing ability. He can teach Tre Ford more about preparation and that sort of thing. But I think for Tre Ford, this is a great opportunity for him just to solidify that he is a starting quarterback in this league. And we know he can run. He's a better thrower than people give him credit for, I believe. But now it's reinforcing those areas you need to be as a successful starter with preparation off field, how you are a leader, how you conduct yourself, and Cody Fajardo can come in and help that way. So it's a big leap of faith because I know there's some people in the league that don't think this is going to work out because they don't believe Tre Ford has enough to be a starting quarterback. But I think there's enough belief that he is knocking on the door of being a starting quarterback. So definitely hope he takes it, but I'm really happy that Tre Ford's going to get a great opportunity to be number one, and he's going into camp as number one. It's I would say it's settled. It's Tre Ford 1, Cody Fajardo 2, and we'll see what happens behind those two. But very happy that Tre Ford is getting this opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a little bit more cautiously optimistic with Ford from what we've seen since he's entered the league. Mm-hmm. I will agree that like they haven't put around, like you look at who was in that quarterback room his first 2 years in the league and basically inexperience as a whole within that quarterback room, which I don't think helped any of those three. I think, if you're, no matter if you're NFL, CFL, doesn't matter what football league, if you're playing pro football, having a young quarterback room with no real veteran presence isn't going to go well because you're not going to have those people to bounce off those questions of situations that they've seen that you haven't seen yet. So I liked the Bethel Thompson signing last year because I thought it would give Ford that, soundboard and the ability to kind of learn from someone who's been there, done that. But I'm excited to see what he can do going into a year as the starter, as the guy, and if he can take that next step. Not just because he's a Canadian, but he's shown a lot of talent. But I mean, it would help a lot, for the Canadian quarterback conversation if him and Rourke both have a very solid year in 2025.
I agree with you, and I like your point, Shane, about let's not make this a Canadian thing, even though that's a great bonus if this works out. It's an absolutely fantastic bonus. But we have to look Tre Ford as a quarterback, right? And this is not a gimmick. Maybe Chris Jones, when he drafted him, thought, I'm drafting Tre Ford as a quarterback, but then I get this speedy option on the field as a running back or a receiver. And unfortunately for Chris Jones, Tre Ford said, I'm not doing that. Which is amazing that Tre Ford was able to stick that out, right? And some people will say, well, you're insubordinate, and to a certain degree, I guess if you're told to do something, maybe you should just do it. But Tre Ford stuck to his beliefs and his principles, and he won out. But I do believe that he is a legit quarterback. Now, is he a starting quarterback? That's the question. And really the only place where we are going to find that answer out is here, which I think Tre Ford bought into the new culture here. I mean, Ed Hervey has said many times, whatever happened before, it's over with. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You can trust that what we're telling you is what we're telling you. And there's no gamesmanship. There's no mind games. We are going to be 100% honest with you, Tre. And he saw what's happening, with the culture, and he bought into it. So that's good. Now it's up to him. They're giving him the keys. It's up to him to take advantage of it. But to me, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think cautious optimism is fair. I don't think he's established as a starter yet. I do think he's a good quarterback option. You need two quarterbacks to win now, and he's definitely in that equation. And so is Cody Fajardo. But now he has to prove he can take the next step to be a starter. And there's more than just success on the field. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's everything. You're a leader. And when you're on the field as a quarterback, you're a coach. You're basically a playing coach out there. You have to be able to handle that huddle and handle your offense like a coach and like the leader that is required. So I'm glad he's going to get the opportunity, but you're right. I mean, cautious optimism, I think that is fair. And I think it's really kind of silly when people are championing Tre Ford and Nathan Rourke just because they're Canadian. That's not enough for me. That shouldn't be enough for anybody. That's, to me, lowering the bar severely low. Nathan Rourke is a quarterback, legit quarterback. Tre Ford to me is a legit quarterback. But now it's just about putting it all together.
Exactly. And then, yeah, like you said, it's a bonus that they're Canadian, right? Like they perform well. It's going to help, elevate some of these other Canadians coming through. I believe there's 5 expected to be in this in the 2025 draft class.
Yeah.
There should be quite a bit available, and I'm interested to see what happens come then. But you talk about culture change, and obviously that's a top-down approach. We've seen Edmonton kind of go back to the double E logo, put the Elks logo as their secondary, which I always thought was weird that they made the Elks logo primary to begin with. I thought they would have kept the double E as kind of a symbol to connect both the old and the new, because the logo is iconic, right? I think a lot of people can agree that it doesn't matter what it's named, is that double E logo is Edmonton football. And if you keep that as your primary logo,
100%.
People will feel connected to it. So I'm glad they went back to it. Hopefully that means that we're going to see yellow numbers on their green jerseys in the future, because personally, I think it's a great look. I've been wanting it for forever, and I hope they go back to it. But there's reports early in the year where new ownership might have kicked the tires on maybe going back to the Eskimo name. I know we've talked about it off camera. What's your sense regarding that type of reports and where this new ownership, who is my understanding was a longtime season ticket holder, was part of the Edmonton community, the Edmonton football community for a long time. Where do you think this new ownership is going to go in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think in the next 5 years, you're not going to see a name change, because I think there's so much work that has to be done. I know there are fans that, have walked away because they changed the name, which I find, okay, really? It's just, to me, it's just silly. It's just extremely silly. I love the old name too. I mean, I really did. I mean, when the name changed, I mean, I remember looking around my stuff in my office because it's filled with Eskimos stuff, and yeah, I shed a tear or two. But there's been too much emphasis on the name. If this team was a winning football team over the last 4 years, the name isn't even close to being an issue. I don't see a name change coming anytime soon. I just think, you know, this club is going to, they're on this road to recovering from what has happened over the last few years. You know, the number of losses dollar wise were, 16, 20 million. I don't know what it is. And it's probably going to be more losses in the next few years. And I think Dan Barnes from Post Media had an article about that before Christmas saying that Larry Thompson expects to lose maybe 3-4 million over the first few years, right? So it's going to be tough sledding for this football team, even with all this excitement and optimism around. It's expensive to change the name back to begin with. I mean, when Eskimos changed to Elks, it was millions of dollars, right? Because you have to change so much. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I was surprised how much effort there was to move away from the double E at the time. And at the time, the president was Chris Presson. And I remember being at Commonwealth for the unveiling of the Elks name. It was one of the best things I've ever seen. It was a great presentation, but I think there was too much effort to go away from the double E and emphasize the Elks logo. The double E, as you said, it's iconic. I mean, when people look at the Elks logo who are just casual football fans, they had no idea what it was. They said, well, that used to be the Eskimos. Like, oh, the name changed? Oh, really? Wow, okay. But double E, it's like, wow, I know who that is, right? And I mean, it's an iconic name. It's not just in Canada. I think it's in North America. I think in some parts of the world, there's fans that have seen that logo and go, wow, that's the double E. It's a slick logo, and I think that's what's being emphasized now. And you saw it, like the slick presentation, the classic look, Edmonton Elks. It looks great. Back to the name. If there's a general sense, I believe there's probably a general sense of what would it be better if we went back. However, it's not so simple. The reason why the name changed because of sponsorships. The corporate sponsors were going to pull out, and they did pull out, and they've never come back. I won't name them. Everyone can research that on their own, but they've never come back. Right? It's hard to find the support of corporate sponsors to begin with, and once you have it, you have to make sure you're going to keep them. So I think if Larry Thompson wants to change the name, and I'm just saying this from a general sense because I don't see this coming, if ever, but definitely in the interim, I don't see this for the next at least 4 or 5 years if it ever happens. But Larry Thompson's going to have to gauge corporate sponsors and go, are you okay with this? And if he gets consensus, then great. All right, go change the name. If he doesn't, if there's even one that says, I don't know, then I don't think you can do it. And I'm with you, Shane. I think there's too much talk about the name and not enough talk about this team as an organization, which did lose its way. I think they're getting back to their old values of the green and gold, and the Eskimo way has been brought out, which this gets a little awkward, right? So we need to go. We're the Elks, and we need to go back to the Eskimo way. But there was, Chris Morris brought it up when he was introduced as president and CEO. He says we have to figure out what Elks Nation is, right? And there is a kind of a drilling of trying to find new fans. Where are they? There are some fans that have walked away for sure, and that hurts the club. And there are some fans that maybe not happy with the name, but they're still here, right? But as far as the name change is concerned, I don't think we're going to be there, if ever. I think in the next few years, it's not going to be something that is going to be even seriously considered. The double E is what they're focusing on. That's the brand.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the unfortunate thing for the Elks was that the name change happened right with the Chris Jones era of football, and you weren't winning, right? I think there's
And
a lot of
COVID, and there was just
yeah,
so much. It was a perfect storm of all the things that could go wrong at the time. Yeah.
yeah, and like it doesn't matter what your name is if you're not winning football games, if you're not winning games, no matter the sport, if you're not winning, you're gonna struggle having fans come out. Even the most
100%.
diehard fans, right? You're gonna ask them to come spend out money to watch their team get blown out. Not
Yeah.
really gonna happen, right?
Nope.
So I love it going back to the double E. I think it's crisp. It's a beautiful look. I'm excited to see how they roll it out this season and how much we see it on the field, on the uniforms, in their presentations, their social media. I'm really excited to see that come back. But I think at the end of the day, like if they want, they want people back in seats, they're just gonna have to win games, right? It all comes down
Yeah.
to winning
Exactly.
games.
Yeah. And to your point about the gold numbers, they're coming back. They are
Thank
coming
God.
back. Broadcast wise, the white numbers were nice because you could see them. But even as I'm watching them, I'm going, my team isn't green and white. My team's green and gold, for goodness sake.
But
So
we talk
gold's
about
coming back.
like iconic looks, right? When you think of Double E, you think of Warren Moon. You think of those 5 Grey Cups where they were wearing those gold numbers, and it's just that like the green and gold just screams Edmonton. Like it just screams Edmonton football. I know they got away from it and they kind of rolled out the white numbers for most of the 2000s and whatnot. Like I think Ricky Ray era and whatnot was rolling out the white numbers. But you look at that green and gold numbering, it's just, it fits. It just looks nice. It looks right. So I'm excited for it. And if they do come back, and when they come back, I will be buying myself an Edmonton Elks jersey because I've been waiting for the yellow numbers to come back. Because I just, again, iconic look.
Yeah, for sure.
But continue with the culture change. Obviously, upper management ownership. But how important is Mark Killam and the coaching staff that has been brought in? How important do you think those hirings will be come February when they're looking at improving their defense and trying to bring in some unknown talent from the States and kind of building that winning culture and helping Tre Ford and Cody Fajardo going forward?
First, Mark Killam, the hire was a home run, and a bit of a surprise because, I felt and there was a sentiment that Rick Campbell was the number one candidate, and maybe he was. And a lot of people said, well, what did Rick do in the interview process to lose the job? And I said, well, you could look at it that way or look at it this way. What did Mark Killam do to win the job? And, Ed Hervey will, and I believe him. He's like, look, I had no delusions about who I wanted. I just let the process play out. And interestingly enough, he did say, in this business, you sometimes have to sacrifice the feelings of the other person. So I would imagine Rick Campbell was really hurt by not being the head coach of this franchise that his father was so legendary for. Rick being back in Ottawa was a wild turn, but I'm glad he is back. I mean, I think that's going to be a big help for the Red Blacks this year. But Mark Killam, just like energy, like you talk to him and you're just ready to go to battle with him, man. Like it's just crazy. He's a heck of a person who I think got the real raw deal in Calgary, being let go along with Monson, two probably were their two best coaches last season. But Mark Killam actually was born here. He played university ball here. His wife is from here. It's just so many connection points, and you look how many players just came out of the woodwork and said, he's the best coach I've ever played for. I don't think I've ever seen that before. A player endorsement, players endorsing a coach. Like, that's outstanding. And then the staff he puts together. I mean, Jordan Maximic has been one of the best offensive play callers in this league for the last few seasons. And now he gets to come home again for a third stint with this organization. J.C. Sherritt is the defensive coordinator. He's 36. He's 36. You can make an argument he could maybe still be playing, right? I mean, here's a young man as a coach who's going to be relatable, who's been in the coaching pipeline now since 2019. I love the fact they kept Steven Sorrells, who took a ragtag group and made this group into a powerhouse. Least amount of sacks given up last year. Elks led the team in rushing, big part of it. Now, I do think there's going to be some change on that offensive line, but, Coach Sorrells won that job just from what he's done the last 2 years. The fact that Demetrius Mackie is back is huge as well. I know he's a special teams coordinator, but it'll be more by committee, but he'll be the coordinator. He's also going to be the D-line coach. Love him. He's just outstanding. And he's got the best out of most of the players that he has coached, including Jake Ceresna. And Aaron Grimes back to coach defensive backs. That's an interesting one for me because he's a relatively young coach who came back to be a defensive assistant for the last 6 games. But, the guy's got a lot of knowledge base, and the guy's fun to be around. And there's a lot of players on that team that are coming back that'll relate to him. So I know I'm missing guys. There's Des Cotillier that worked with Killam in Calgary. Tristan Dice, he's been around Jordan Maximic for 4 seasons, right? In the offensive coaching room. So it's a nice mixture of experience and youth. And I think that, Mark Killam said the other day, like, you can't just pick your friends, right? You have to have alignment with who you want to hire. And sometimes you get surprised, right? And it just works in an interview process where I've never met the person, never talked to him, but then you start talking to him and you go, well, this works. And then there's some where you have a like-mindedness with. J.C. Sherritt made a great comment on our evening sports show the other night on Inside Sports with Brendan Escott. And he said about the relationship with Mark Killam, which first started in 2019, he says the coaching fraternity is interesting because when you think you're not being interviewed, you are. So every day is almost like a job interview. Every opportunity is almost like a job interview. So I thought that was a really good comment. But, Mark Killam is ready to bring it. And, let's see what happens here. So he's, he doesn't come across as phony. He comes across as authentic. And he cares about his group.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were seeing it in Ottawa too with Rick Campbell being hired. There's a lot of fans who were kind of confused or kind of taken aback that Dice would hire someone with his type of pedigree and connection to Ottawa and kind of be like, oh, you're basically, there's a lot of comments about him hiring his replacement. But at the end of the day, I mean, when you hire high quality coaches, you want that, right? You want to build a team around you that is high quality, that have won big games, either as a player, as a coach. You're not really looking over your shoulder, right? You just want the best people on your roster, right? Like you shouldn't be, if you're, as a head coach, the best way to keep your job is win games. Yep. And to do that, you want to build the best team. And if that means you're hiring someone who many view as a potential replacement, well, so be it. He won't be my replacement as long as I'm winning games. So I think it's great. You're seeing a lot of, and I mean, it's not just Edmonton and Ottawa. You're starting to see it in BC, Calgary, even Saskatchewan, where you've started to build these rosters. I think Hamilton with Monson going there as their DC. You're seeing a lot of that. We know that our jobs are safe as long as we win. We need to build up our best team to give us that best chance of winning. So it should be interesting. I think I don't know how accurate it is, but it seems like there were a lot of teams waiting on their decisions based on where Killam and Campbell were going to play out, how that situation in Edmonton was going to play out, because obviously heading into Grey Cup, there was a lot of talk about it, about Campbell being that front runner and then Killam got released, and then he was being talked about as the front runner for BC, and then he obviously had the interview with Edmonton, and rest is history.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a good point that you brought up. That I believe Mark Killam was BC's number one choice too. So Killam had a choice to make, right? And he chose Edmonton. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the connections; it's hard not to, right?
Yeah.
So before we let you go, one last question.
Sure.
Top 5 free agents for the Elks that you would like to be re-signed, and if not re-signed, who would be the biggest value for another team to sign if they hit the open market in February?
Okay, so I'll do this from 5 to 1. I'm going to put Gino Lewis as 5 because I do think if the number comes down, I think you got to bring him back. I think he and Tre Ford have an excellent relationship that has developed. Eugene Lewis is not the easiest guy, I think, to work with because he is very demanding and he wants the ball. But that's great. You want a guy that wants the ball. But Gino Lewis had a tremendous second half last year, and I would love to see him back in green and gold if it works. If it doesn't work for him here, I guess it's who's willing to pay. Is anyone going to pay up to $300,000? I would say probably not. So Calgary is obviously a fit with Vernon Adams there. Saskatchewan, would he go back to Montreal, for example? I don't know. I think there are a lot of teams that will line up for him. Sean Oakman, I put at 4. I know he's going to be 33 in 25, but he was good last year. I think you could argue that he was their best defensive lineman for the season. His pass rush win rate was high. The only thing is his pressures kind of diminished after he would win the pass rush. That's according to PFF. So you would love to get home more, but he wreaked havoc on the inside. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where else he would go, to be honest with you. But an interesting dynamic too, because would he sign back if I don't know if Demetrius Maxey was a reason he got released early in Toronto or not. I don't know the history there, but I put Oakman there. Lucius Purifoy, I know he's going to be 31, 32 this year. Love to see he's the best safety in the league last year. Stayed healthy, hard hitter, and part of that, I think that leadership that Ed Hervey's looking for in that secondary, Lou provides it. So, geez, I think any team would love to have Lucius Purifoy on their team. I put Scott Hutter at 2 because I think he's so important from the leadership standpoint. He's a Canadian, plays on special teams, one of their best special teams player. And I don't know what they're going to do at safety. Are they going to, stick with an American? Are they going to flip and switch to a Canadian? And Scott Hutter is a starting Canadian safety, in my opinion. And I think he is underrated. And again, I go back, anyone would love this guy. And same with Niles Morgan. I think he's their number one priority right now. I think they got to bring him back. I know he's testing NFL options. I haven't seen him on a workout for any NFL team yet. So that's working out in the Elks' favor, not so much for Niles, because I'm sure he would like to play down there. But, Niles Morgan's the leader of that defense. He's the heart and soul of it. And, man, he just deserves a winning season. He deserves success. He has done everything that this club has asked him to do. He's overcome the injuries. I would say there would be teams lining up for Niles Morgan for sure. So I would say those are the top 5. It was a hard task. I know you gave me this task to build this top 5 because I look at the roster or the pending free agents, and I look at the offensive line, and David Foucault I think is coming off his best CFL season, but I still think there's people that look at him and go liability, and he's going to be 35. And I love what Hunter Stewart did last year as a 6-0 lineman. I thought he was very, very admirable in the role he played, and he started the season as a starter, then as a 6th man. I thought he did a good job. Jacob Zott, I thought, did a great job coming in as the de facto fullback after they lost every fullback, Tanner Green and Plamondon, and then Grahovic gets hurt in Hamilton, and they bring in Zott, and I don't think they're going to have an O-lineman be their fullback this year. So, I can't count him. There's the depth players, what does Ed Hervey think about them? So I think there's going to be a lot of change to this roster. But I think those are the 5 that I could reasonably come up with, and I think they all make some sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good list for the Elks. And I mean, we have just under a month. I think it's 26 days until free agency, which means I think there's only like 19 or some days, maybe 18 some days until the legal tampering window, or as they call it, the communication window, opens up. So should be interesting to see what happens with the next month. Obviously, not everything will be set up on free agency day. There will be signings happening, a couple of days after.
Yep.
I think Eugene Lewis is the biggest story, in my opinion, heading into that free agency period. Obviously, there's ties with VA, with his days in Montreal. Can Calgary have Begelton and Philpott and Lewis on the roster?
Good point. Salary-wise, doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But you look at, a team, obviously, you have like Justin McInnes in BC, who sounds by all reports is close to an extension. Eugene Lewis could hit the market as the number 1 receiver, depending on what happens in Winnipeg with Dalton Schoen and Kenley Lawler. But I think him going back to Edmonton would be great, not for just the fan perspective, but also the team. As you mentioned, like, he is an elite receiver. He is arguably, wide receiver 1. He is easily the most, the easiest target in the red zone. He brings so much to the Elks that you don't really want him to leave. But I think he's going to be the biggest watch over the next month to see what happens. And once that communication window opens, how much that plays into it, right? Because he can go out, test his market, see where other teams view him dollar-wise, and see if Edmonton can kind of play ball with that.
Yeah, and I think, that's the key is, where does the receiver market fall? Does it fall far enough for Ed Hervey to jump back into the market? Because he said on the Zoom call at the league meetings in Charlotte, it has to get at least down to 270, in the 250 to 270 range to start talking. If it doesn't go down that far, then he's out, right? And you look at the lines, both lines, there are attractive players that could be available. Like, I'll just bring out 2 right now. On the defensive line, I think it's reasonable to speculate, could Jake Ceresna make a return to Edmonton? Because of D-Max, his wife is from here. And then on the offensive side, on the offensive line side, David Beard, he was drafted by Ed Hervey in 2015, probably the best center in the league, and he is from Edmonton, right? So would he be able to land both of those? Those 2 are going to be, I think, highly sought, and I think Ed Hervey is going to be in the mix for them. And the interesting thing about the receiver market is it's thin, right? It's Geno Lewis, it's DeMonte Coxie, it's Kenny Lawler, it's Dalton Schoen, Stephen Dunbar, who I've looked at as well. That's one name I
Justin
would look
Hardy.
at. Justin Hardy, yeah. Like, if the Redblacks don't sign Justin Hardy, Geno Lewis would be a nice replacement.
Yeah, and again,
right?
100%.
Love that change.
100%. But again, I think you look at value, right? If we're talking, I think Justin Hardy and Eugene Lewis probably come in kind of close to that same value, probably like between 225, 270. And I mean, Hardy's put up back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. He's clearly probably, since he's come to the CFL, has probably been the most consistent. I think he had like he ended the season, I think he had like an 82 catch rate, which is ridiculously high for receivers, no matter the league. My big thing for Edmonton is, if you're talking about Canadian safety, you got Tre Ford's brother. You got Terrell coming in. He's a pending free agent. Could that connection be able to drive him into Edmonton, play with his brother for a little bit? There's definitely some question marks there.
And the key thing you said is Canadian, right? So, and that Ed Hervey's willing to spend the money on, especially a Canadian starter that's going to flip ratio. He's definitely going to do that. He'll pay for that. He'll pay for a David Beard. I think he would pay for a Jake Ceresna too. So like we're talking, that's could be over $500,000 on 3 players if we're talking, those 3 if they come. Is there money left over for a Geno Lewis at over 200? That's the question, right? So, Ed Hervey, I don't think is afraid to go with value at other positions like receiver or like linebacker, even running back. But it all depends on what's left over and what does the market command for those receivers, right? Like how's the dollar figure going to come down? And I know someone during the call said, well, Tim Whyte came down after he wanted $300,000, but we got to remember Ed Hervey he was the general manager, but he was the second or third in command, right? So, and he made a point of saying the organization wanted him signed, so he got signed. And then he ended up for 225 or 220, like somewhere in that range. So
exactly.
Ed has the full control here. And that's the key. And he has already said, I am not going above a certain threshold to sign a receiver. He's going to work on other areas first. But if Eugene Lewis is still available and is at a workable number, it would be great to have him back.
For sure. I think every team would like to find a way to get him on the roster.
Yeah.
I think he's that kind of game breaker, and it should be very interesting. I think there's a lot of players that are going to wait for that communication window to kind of see where their market is. So,
yeah, for sure.
But again, I thank you for coming on. It was a little bit longer than just 20 to 30 minutes, but honestly, I love these conversations, so I'm never going to complain.
Well, it's hard to say we're going to do a CFL pod and have it go a shorter length, right? And there's so much to talk about, and it's great to talk to you again, Shane. I know we talk a lot on social media, and it's nice to talk to you face to face virtually. And I appreciate the time, and glad the schedule's out too. That's exciting, and we can all plan now for 2025. It's great to see you, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great to talk, and hopefully we'll have you on throughout the season talking about hopefully some all positive Edmonton Elks stuff during the 2025 season. Again, thank you so much for making time and coming on for the first episode of 2025.
Thank you, Shane. My pleasure.
Have a wonderful one. We'll talk later.
You betcha. Take care, man.
Have a good one.
See ya. You too. Bye.
And there you go. There was Dave Campbell of Shed 80, the color analyst for the Edmonton Elks. When we come back, we will be having Derek Dennis, former CFL Offensive Lineman, 2016 Offensive Lineman of the Year award winner, joining us, as well as 2018 Grey Cup champion. So stick around. We'll jump into a sneak peek of what to expect from BC Lions Arrow Up home turf. You'll be able. It premieres on YouTube on January 20th. Check out their YouTube channel, BC Lions, for that.
I have the characteristics to do anything that I put my mind to.
I love the pressure, and that's why I do it. And I'm obsessed with it, and I want that feeling all the time.
I don't think there's another fullback doing it as well as I am.
He's gonna score! Touchdown, BC Lions!
If I would have gave up, I wouldn't be here to experience all these great moments.
T.J. Lee, taking it to the house!
When we go into football mode, the world slows down for us, but it keeps moving fast for everybody else.
This is starting life over, I feel like. Kind of goes along with the year that I've been having. It's just been crazy, man.
This football, temporary. That little girl is mine forever.
We're here with former Grey Cup champion and Offensive Lineman of the Year winner, Derek Dennis. Thank you for joining us on the first episode. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing today, Shane?
I'm good. You got a lot better weather down in Arizona than we got up in Ontario right now. I'm assuming you don't got 3 feet of snow outside of your house.
No white on the ground. It is a little chilly. Normally this time of year, the temperature does drop. I know what's cold for me is probably a nice spring day for you, but when you've been in Arizona as long as I have, your blood kind of thins out. So anything below, let me see if I can still calculate this in Celsius. I would say anything below not even minus. I would say anything below 13, 14 is cold for me.
Yeah, I wish. That sounds like a nice brisk spring day for us up here.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, what's a spring day for you is a winter day for me.
Yeah, clearly you're lucky. So how's retirement? I know you've switched over to coaching. How's been retirement? How's the coaching life going for you?
Retirement's good, man. Honestly, the coaching is more of like a side thing I do now in my free time. Just kind of keeps me around the game. Allows me to be able to kind of share my knowledge. Coaching with a couple buddies, guys that I play with. Actually, you're probably familiar with Gump Hayes, who played in Ottawa. I played in Calgary with him. He's one of the coaches that I coach with. Jalen Strong, who was ASU grad. ASU legend, third round draft pick in Houston, Texas. That's the head coach. So I got a heavy influence, in my title is the offensive line run game coordinator. But I help out a lot with him, kind of calculating the offense, putting players in the position to make plays. All the run plays are all designed by me. And then I help Gump out too on defense, man. Just being an offensive lineman and having to study defenses for so long and knowing about the structure of defenses, just helping them out with, giving them ideas on how to, better attack an offense and put the defensive guys in a better position to make plays on the offense. So just doing my best to just give away all the knowledge I can to the next generation, man. Building a nice program. Won a state championship last year. Building, recruiting kids are wanting to come play for us. Programs getting bigger. We're moving up in division, so things are going pretty good right now. So just enjoying that part of it. And then my day job is actually I'm in upper management for PepsiCo now. So I'm actually corporate America, trying to climb the corporate American ladder. So yeah, man, honestly, not to say that the transition from playing ball to that next phase of life wasn't a little bit challenging. There were definitely avenues that I thought that was going to be available for me once I was done playing that just didn't come to fruition. And I just kind of had to, realign myself and figure out a new journey, a new path. And, now, doing really well, man. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
So what you're saying is that if we want to get sponsored by Pepsi, I just reach out to you. You can hook it up.
I'm not that high up on the totem ladder. I'm more in the manufacturing side of things. So I actually work in the facilities and the plants.
Oh, nice.
Technically I work in a Frito-Lay plant. So I'm around more of the snacks part of it. That's more of the side of the business for PepsiCo that brings in more revenue is potato chips, right? So potato chips and Quaker is a part of that as well. So everything that Quaker offers, whether it's oatmeal and cookies and syrups and cereals and all that type of stuff, right? So all the stuff that we eat on a day-to-day basis. I'm more of the tied to the frontline manufacturing side of things, where it's actually being made in the facilities that's being made. I'm not in the marketing, all that side, but I do plan to eventually in my journey, as long as I'm with the company, probably make a somewhat of a jump to get the Gatorade or get the Pepsi and get to that marketing sales kind of stuff, be around more of the the sponsorships and the alignment that they have with with the leagues and sports leagues and being involved in that. So hopefully that's somewhere in my career trajectory at some point.
Yeah, you were with the Coyotes for their last year in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I was
Working with them.
there for a little bit. I was with them for a little bit. It was kind of like a internship in a sense. It was like an internship that transitions into like a career, but that was around like right before their last season. It was kind of tough for me in the sense of like financially, it just wasn't a well-paying job, just wasn't making a lot of money. I was kind of looking more of it at the bright side of things, is just being involved in the ticketing premium sales of sports and just hopefully maybe turning that into a career. But was the team's future was up in the air and all that type of stuff. But it was nice. It was a nice little, foray into it for a little bit. Gave me a little bit of insight into the sports world in the sense of sales and ticketing and marketing and seeing what has to go into that. But yeah, I kind of did a complete 180 and just kind of decided to go a whole new career path in a different sense, right?
Yeah, that would be a 180. So no future CFL gig is what you're saying. You're not pursuing that.
To be honest, To be honest, I don't know. I mean, technically, I am in business and I'm with a Fortune 50 company. I'm going to be learning business in that aspects and with a company that has to deal with a lot of different things and a lot of different avenues. So who knows, though? Maybe I could do, what some of the other CFL guys have done where they spend 20, 30 years in business and then they come back and be the commissioner or they be the president of a team and kind of run the business aspects of things and not just more on the field. Maybe I could get an opportunity to, with some of the former coaches that I have that's now head coaches, maybe somebody wants to, bring me in for maybe some type of, one of the internships that kind of turn into you getting a position coaching job down the line or whatever the case may be, right? Honestly, don't really know. I still got a lot of connections up in the league, still got a lot of friends, a lot of guys who are either playing, a lot of guys who are coaching or in front office roles, former coaches who are head coaches. So who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But yeah, man, CFL hasn't been knocking my door down since they sent me back home.
Yeah, that entire experience. I mean, we talked during that was when you were with Edmonton and whatnot, and that was a rather disheartening from a fan's perspective. Hearing some of the stuff that came out during that was always. I
Yeah,
mean, it's business, but it's also you don't want to hear how some of the players are getting treated. I mean, you must have saw the report cards that came out from the CFLPA. That kind of threw a lot of they threw a lot of fans through the loop, thinking that their team was a lot better than where fans were or where players put them. I think BC and Edmonton were I think two of the worst teams, which given
yeah,
Edmonton I think that wasn't a surprise, but BC definitely kind of caught a lot of people off. Um,
yeah.
you were talking, you were watching the league during 2024. What are your thoughts on it? Where do you think the league's at? Where do you think the league needs to go to kind of improve and gain, a bigger audience, not just in Canada, but also in the States with their new CBS partnership?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's a very complex situation to figure out. And I mean, if you look at it either from the inside or outside looking in, I mean, you've been a fan of the league for a long time. You've seen some stuff. Do you feel like the league has grown or changed or expanded or is moving in the right direction, in your personal opinion? Even if you're not tied into seeing the inner workings, like, do you feel like the CFL is moving in a direction that is going to grow?
See, I think COVID impacted a lot of that. Personally, I think the growth that we were seeing kind of hit a wall because of
Hmm.
COVID. But I will say that, like, comparing to when Ambrosi took over in 2017 to now, it seems like there's been a lot of growth. Um, Obviously, would have liked to see where things would have led without COVID. But
Hmm.
from a fan's perspective, from like looking on from a fan side of things, the ownerships are obviously kind of settled for the most part. BC has new owners, Montreal has new owners, Edmonton finally went private, and it
Okay.
the looks like there's less turnover happening year over year. There's a lot of players sticking. You're seeing more 2-year deals. So, fan perspective, I think it's growing, but I can only see it from up north. Uh, just curious on how it
Yeah.
is viewership wise, in the States and the
Oh no.
exposure
See.
that like universities are seeing and if players are going back, things like that. We don't really get to see that up here.
Yeah. No. Honestly, I wouldn't even say the CFL is an afterthought down here. The CFL is not a thought at all. It's not even on the radar of a lot of people. Um, they know more about the UFL than they would about the CFL. And that's just, granted it's here in the US and it has those bigger outlets, those media outlets to have access to. But yeah, like I know there's times like the realization for me as an American player when I came home and my career was done was that nobody knew who I was and nobody gave a damn who I was. It'd be like, oh, you look like you play football. And I'd be like, yeah, I played. And it'd be like, oh, where'd you play? And I would say all the places I played, and the only places that they wanted to key on was the NFL teams that I spent time with. That was it. The fact that I spent a couple years in the NFL is probably the only real reason why I get a little bit of, in a sense, love for my career. But like when I say, oh yeah, I spent 8 years in Canada, they just treat it like, oh okay, that's cool. So it's
That's
like a so it's like a to be honest, there really is no like unless for as an American player, and I'll say this to be real, as an American player, the only way you're going to get anything out of your career is if you stay in Canada for the rest of your life. If you don't plan on staying in Canada, if you plan on coming back to the US and you think that you played 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 years in Canada is going to mean something when you come back home, no. It's almost like, and I know I hate to compare this to like, you know, people who serve in the military, and like from my perspective, because to me, there's some similarities in the sense of like the PTSD and all the stuff that you go through. You put your body on the line, all that stuff like that. Never in my life will I ever say that what I did as a pro football player even measures up to someone actually, putting their life on the line for their country, for their family, for their community. Like that's where things differ. And I always have a great respect for the military. But a lot of the things that like military people go through, right? If you ever listen to somebody serve the military go, I was in Iraq for 4 or 5 years and fighting and going through all this stuff that like you would think when you got home people would celebrate you for, and it was just kind of like an afterthought, right? Like you never got the support you needed, you never got the things that you thought you would gain from it, the accolades, the financial stability, like all the stuff that you think will come with when you do something that's supposed to be on a grander scale. You really honestly don't get that as an American player in the CFL. So for a lot of those guys fighting for the contracts that they get, the stuff that they go through, playing. I mean, if the teams don't plan on making you part of the coaching staff or kind of incorporating you into the league in some way, shape, or fashion, like, I mean, honestly, it really doesn't matter what you do up there. So, I maybe outside of like the introspective of like football players, like maybe football players have a little bit of respect for it, like, okay, you play pro, the game, that type of stuff, right? But I mean, yeah, it's not really a big deal. So, it's not like I run around here and expect people to know or tell people like, hey, I used to do this, this, and that. Like it just doesn't matter. And the only thing they really care about is the fact that I got a chance to, be with the Miami Dolphins or the Carolina Panthers or the Chicago Bears, or that's the only thing they care about, right? They don't really care about anything else, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, like I said, it was that transition from retiring and trying to figure out what life was going to be like. Um, thinking that you had somewhat of a Hall of Fame type of career and everybody was going to be, checking for you and looking for you. And after that, honestly, man, the minute you don't put on those pads and those cleats anymore, the same people who used to always call and check on you, they don't call and check on you no more. You don't hear from them. People don't text you. They don't check in on you. They don't see how you doing. They don't, see what type of support you need, right? So it's kind of like on the back end. And then when they see you doing well, then it's like, people start reaching out and say, hey, I see you doing really good. Like, how'd you do it? What are you doing? What'd you go through, right? But that's just something that a lot of guys are going, they're going to figure out as they go through it, right? You're taking pictures with your head coach while you playing, but in 5-10 years, that head coach ain't gonna call your phone no more because you serve no purpose to him. So that's just the reality of it, right? So at the end of the day, it's it's a business. It's really a business. I know the game has a lot of its cliche monikers and sayings and family and this and that, but I mean, the hardest lesson you learn in life, especially with something that you put in so much time, energy, and physically, mentally, mostly sacrifices you went through with your family, sacrifices that you went through. Like for me, man, I'm missing the birth of my kids to be playing in games and doing all types of stuff, and it didn't mean nothing. So, uh, that's just a reality that you got to come to as a pro football player, especially playing in another country and in another league. Unless you plan on settling, roots up there, it's really not gonna. It's not fruitful at all.
do you think like teams need to take more responsibility for setting up play, or like the league, not necessarily teams, but like the league and the PA need to take more of a foot and take more responsibility on setting players up for post football than what they're currently doing?
I think they're trying. I think they're trying really hard. It's just you got limited resources. The resources are not there. Even the NFL, with all its unlimited resources, struggle with that concept a little bit, right? And I know it's like not, like my thoughts are very, I'm very cut and dry. I kind of just look at it for what it is. I don't try to like, put any hyperbole or make anything to it. But I remember watching like Colin Kaepernick's like Netflix documentary and kind of comparing, being in the NFL to like modern day slave trade, right? And again, like it's almost, I wouldn't say it is that, but it has eerie similarities to it, right? Because the minute you get hurt, you're not gonna get any money anymore. You don't have guaranteed medical coverage, so you can have an injury that's gonna be debilitating and for the rest of your life. Like, honestly, I broke my ankle. I'm still dealing with that to this day. Like I still get pains in it and stuff like that. But if I wasn't able to figure out life on its own, I wouldn't have any medical coverage to be able to take care of these injuries that I got from, putting my body on the line and fighting for the little bit of money and contracts that I did get, right? So, um, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Do I think it's going to get done anytime soon? Probably not. Is it making some strides? Like you said, yeah, from outside looking in, you can see certain little things and you can say, yeah, the league is making progress, or the game is making progress, it's going in the right direction, right? But at the end of the day, um for the couple of stories that you have to say like, hey, this was a great experience and this worked out for me, you got about 5 to 10 that's going to have an opposite feeling of that, right? So my thing would be like, if you want to know any real trajectory on you making progress, how do you lessen that number, right? For every, if you take 40 guys that played in the league and, five of them or 5 to 10, 5 to 7 of them have a great story about the league, right? Well, what about the other 33, right? What about the guys who played a year or 2 or 3 years and was talked about like they were going to be great stars, and then all of a sudden something happened and disappeared, afterthought, right? Like for me, I think about guys like Terry Williams, who I'm really close with, right? The guy who was essentially a Grey Cup star, right? Took a whole punt return to the house in the Grey Cup, right? And then he goes to Edmonton and you know he goes play for the wrong coach, the wrong system, and now you never hear or see from him again, right? He can't get another contract again, right? He went from being a guy who you thought was a potential star to now it just kind of fizzled out, right? Think about how many of those stories that we see happen all the time, right? Whatever happened to this guy? Whatever happened to this guy? 2, 3 years ago, I thought this guy was going to be a star. Whatever happened to him, right? There's a lot more of those than there are of the guys, you know, um, I'm trying to think, the John Bowmans, the Ryan Phillips, those types of guys, right? The Huffnagels, the Dave Dickinsons, right? For every one of those types of stories of former players who kind of transition and still around the league and have some influence, think about the amount of guys who have done great things for this league who don't, right? Do we talk about Eric Rodgers anymore? Do we talk about Kamar Jordan anymore? Do we talk about, like think about all these great players that have come and done great things in the league that you don't hear about them anymore. You don't see them anymore. If they're not actively trying to be, given opportunities to stay around, you ain't never going to see or hear from them, right? Who's Calgary got like the all-time great receiver. Like you don't know, no one. He never comes around anymore. You don't see him. He's not talked about anymore.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember.
He played
his
in like the
name,
'90s,
but,
2000s. Like someone's gonna mention it,
yeah,
and I mean,
Pitts. That's what his
yeah.
name is, Pitts. But think about it. Like, when's the last time you heard or seen from him, right? Even if they're reaching out and trying to find him, they can't find him. Like, how many of those stories do we have of all-time greats? Like all-time greats who have done great things in this league that people have stories and experiences about watching them play the game. How many of those that you don't even hear or see from them anymore, right? Those are the things. If you look at the NFL, you still going to hear about an all-time NFL great to the day they go, right? You're gonna hear about them all the time. You're gonna see them. The team is gonna honor them. They're gonna bring them back. They're gonna make sure they still involved. They're gonna use them to be able to kind of keep building that brand, right? That's an avenue that's kind of lost in the CFL that they don't take full advantage of.
So, for example, it'd be like Calgary using you going to your alma mater and other universities and talking about the game and bringing kind of the CFL to light. Because I think like a lot of for us up here, we always it's always a talking point of, when the UFL or the XFL came back, the UCFL came back, was a lack of American talent would dwindle. It would, with these new leagues, how would we, show that we're the second best league in North America. If you wanna go to the NFL, if you want to get another chance at the NFL, playing in the CFL is your best route. Would it be beneficial for teams to utilize their alumni to go, especially American alumni or NCAA alumni, to go down to universities and hold camps and hold seminars to the players, being like, hey, the chances of making the NFL out of university is slim. I think it's like 2% of NCAA players make it to the NFL every year. This is another route for you. You can go here at like 22, 23, get a couple years of footage. Like, should that be something that the CFL is exploring?
Well,
or at least the CFLPA?
Let's put it like this. Right now, that thought process is going to be outdated now with the whole trajectory of amateur sports and how it's changing. So, let's put this: CFL is not going to be the second best pro league in North America anymore. It's going to be college football. College football is essentially, with NIL, transfer portal, is now doesn't have the title, but give it 5 to 10 years, you're going to start seeing, I think of it now, they have general managers in college now. When have you ever heard of a general manager for a college football team?
Yeah, like G. Simon just got hired as the GM for Maryland.
For Maryland, exactly. So, if we're being real, CFL now is not only going up against middle tier spring leagues coming up. Now you got to compete with trying to convince guys and again, we talk about top tier talent, right? Because not all those guys who are big college stars are going to be NFL stars, are going to make it to the NFL, right? But how do you convince a guy to take the amount of pay cut that he would have to take to come play in Canada?
Yeah,
You got college guys college guys making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in USD. And you're going to tell them, I'm going to pay you 70,000 CAD for 2 years?
Yeah, it's not feasible with how but again, the other argument people are going to make is not everyone's going to be making massive NIL deals, right? Not everyone.
But if you are at a big time college, right? Think about the type of players, right? Again, there is a way around it. Don't get me wrong, because you still got Division III, you still got Division II, you still got FCS, all that. But again, in order to build the brand, to get it to where you want to get it, to where you can create revenue, you could create consistency, you could create excitement, you need good talent. You don't just need talent, you need good talent.
Yeah.
Because if I'm watching CFL games this past year, to me, the talent level is taking a little bit of a dip from when I played in the league. I don't see the same amount of talent. I don't see the same level of talent that I was seeing before. Like, I mean, if you want to be real, there's a reason why, like, when I came into the league, there were a ton of really good quarterbacks. There were a ton of really good young quarterbacks coming up, right? There were a ton of great defensive ends. I'm talking about like all-time greats. Like, I had to go against, every week I was going against Odell Willis. I'm going against John Bowman. I'm going against Charleston Hughes. I'm going against Cordero Law. I'm going against like just dudes, every week. And then now I'm looking at it and I'm looking at the teams and I'm going, well, I don't see I don't see no double-digit sack guys that would put fear in my heart, right? I mean, I would against Willie Jefferson. I will against, those guys, right? Those are the top tier dogs now, but outside of that, right? That's what, maybe 2, 3 guys. Who else is there to go with? You don't know anybody. They can't replace talent, right? It's not as easy to find those guys anymore as it used to be, right? So I'm watching the games and I'm going, to me, I'm damn near, I'm about to be 40 soon. And I'm looking at the games going, shit, I probably still could play. Like, I feel like at some point, at least at my age now, I should be able to look at the games and go, yeah, I probably can't keep up anymore, right? But there's a reason why Stanley Bryant is damn near 40 and still playing. There's a reason why, guys can still do that. Or there's a couple guys. Not every guy can do it, but there's still guys available that can do that, right? Like, so that's where I'm kind of looking at it from that standpoint. And then again, too, I remember, like you said, COVID, budget cuts, and CFL still firing people because they don't make enough money to pay for everybody. The marketing has taken a dip. It's not at the same level that it was like when I was in the league, right? And that's a big one right there. That coaches cap, I don't think you have the same amount of quality coaches in the league that you used to have.
That coaches cap is horrendous. I hope the new commissioner gets rid of it. That is like the one thing that I want the new commissioner to get rid of is that coaching cap.
Yeah, that coaching cap, like, I get it for the owners. It kind of helped them not, throw money away because, again, all they were doing was going to the good old boys club and just hiring the same guys over and over. And these guys were just racking up contracts and they were still getting paid, right? But again, that also goes into, as a coach, right? As a head coach and as an organization, how are you developing your future coaches? How are you developing? Because, again, the players essentially should be your future coaches. So how many good players have you had come through your program that could transition into being a good coach for you at some point, or whatever the case may be, and the relationship goes sour at some point, and then they don't want to work for you anymore? Or you get them to come work for you, and then they actually see what it's like behind the veil, and then they realize, this ain't what I thought it was. Right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's weird seeing a lot of coaches not coach directly for their former team, like John Bowman going to BC to be a coach. I think after 1 year in Montreal, I think JC Sherritt, now back in Edmonton, left Edmonton after 1 year as a coach, and you see it fairly often.
Coming back had a lot to do with Hervey, because Hervey was the one who signed him and all that.
Yeah.
So you again, like I said, you got certain guys who will have a good relationship, right? And really all it takes is for you to have maybe 1 or 2 good relationships. And don't get me wrong, JC too. His coaching resume is pretty impressive. Because I remember when JC was coaching, I was still playing when JC came to coach in Calgary. He did the guest coach, and then he was actually a position coach in Calgary. Like, I was on the team 2018, 2019. So JC has been paying his dues. I mean, he's been coaching college. He's been down to major colleges. He's been in small colleges. So, like, he's been putting in his rounds to get those opportunities. And then again, all it takes is that one friend or that one former connection that you have to see, like, okay, you've been putting in the work and I need somebody to come in, like, hey, that's kind of what it's going to take. And that may be what it is for me. Like I said, who knows? Maybe in 5 or 10 years, I may get a call from somebody based off of the journey that I take, and they say, hey, you want to come coach, right? Who knows? But who knows where I'm going to be at that point? Am I going to be at the point where I want to say, okay, yeah, I'll come, or like, hey, I done figure this thing out on my own. I'm in a pretty good spot. I don't know if I could, leave that to come do this, right? So it's always best to get them early before you try to get them later. But yeah, I mean to be honest, man, I my love for the league is a little different than it used to be. I mean, that's probably mostly due to my experience with certain individuals and the things that I went through. But I still love the game of football. I still have a lot of friends who play. I still have a lot of friends who coach, or I call them friends. Who knows if they're really friends or not? But just a lot of people that I still know, and I still just keep an eye on it when I could catch a game, type of thing. Like, I'm not looking for the schedule release no more. I'm not trying to map it out, right? It's kind of more of a If there's guys that I have a really great connection with, that I may say, hey, you know what, I'll try to come up there and catch a game and come hang out with some old buddies just to, just for a little bit of nostalgia, right? But like other than that, um, yeah, it's there's so much going on down here for me and life and all that I could see why the CFL is an afterthought. There's no real marketing and nothing down here, right? To be able to get anybody interested. So, um, yeah, I mean, a sense of recruiting Americans and wanting Americans to go play in it, it's kind of a word of a mouth type of thing, right? It got to be somebody that they know that played in there, somebody that they can connect with. Like prime example, Calgary signing PJ Walker, right? PJ actually reached out to me before he signed and said, "Yo, Temple alum, I know you played up there. Could you tell me what it's about?" Right? Because the CFL's been trying to get PJ for years, right? It took finally for him to kind of go through everything, his NFL stuff and all that, right? For him to finally be like, hey, I still want to play the game. Okay, what's the last option for me, right? I guess he didn't want to go back to the UFL or whatever the case may be, right? Maybe he didn't like what was going on there. He decided, you know what, let me go try to see, somewhere else where I could get, a little bit more top tier dollar, whatever the case may be, right? Everybody's situation is always different. But yeah, man, like PJ reached out to me. We had a conversation. And it could have been easy for me to be like, yeah, you know what? Don't go there. You ain't gonna like it. No. I'm saying like, but I'm not that type of person, right? I'm always the type of person to let people know, like, hey, this your life, it's your experiences. Like, if you want to go play ball, hey, I think it's a good spot for you to go play ball. You got a chance to be a starter, type of stuff. Like, I'm that type of person. Like, I ain't never gonna talk down on nobody or talk bad about someone, whether I like them or not like them. Again, I'm always going to try to help a person do what's best for them, right? But that's the type of stuff that like relies on it, right? There's going to be guys that have a great level of trust that used to play in the league that could help bring talent up there, but it's all going to be dependent on those relationships, right? Is he disgruntled? Is he not disgruntled? Is he going to say something good? Is he going to say something bad? Am I going to find out that you was talking bad about me, so now I'm going to talk bad about you? Like, it's just weird, right? So uh, I mean, that's if I'm being real, as a supporter of the people who are still involved in the league, and just a guy who used to play, who will always have some type of connection to the league. You know, uh, when I see certain things done, I kind of have an idea of what it is. Do I agree with it? No. Do I still talk to a lot of guys who still deal with a lot of the same stuff that I dealt with? And that was part of why I was really willing to walk away from the game probably sooner than I needed to. Because I mean, I for sure could have played into my 40s if I wanted to. Um, but it was just more of my own personal animosities of just going through the things that I went through with certain teams and individuals, and just feeling like, do I really want to go through this, right? And again, too, it's a lot tougher for us American guys who have families who don't go up there with us, who have young kids and homes, and I had a mortgage, I had other bills to pay while I'm up in Canada paying rent and apartments and all types of stuff, right? And I'm constantly fighting with teams to be like, hey, you know what? I need this money so that I can support my family the best way I can, and they trying to tell me that they don't want to give me this money, even though I've been playing to the level of getting that money. Like, how much longer did I want to deal with that type of stuff, right? So, um, yeah, man, to each his own. Everybody's situation, their life is going to go differently. Um, everybody got to make the best choice for themselves or whatever they feel like is the best. So hopefully one day I get a chance to come back up there and be a part of the league. Maybe it's just as a fan, and I decide at some point, hey, you know what? I'm just going to take a trip to different CFL stadiums and just kind of go enjoy the experience. Probably only will be during the summer. I ain't never coming up there for another Canadian winter.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, you probably won't see me at Grey Cup.
Yeah, I mean, Grey Cup's at
Unless,
Winnipeg, so that's
yeah,
going to
you
be a hard
won't.
one.
Yeah, you won't see me at Grey Cup. So
That's fair. I mean, hey, no, I mean, I know Canadians that hate our winners. Like, the winners are bad. They can be pretty bad out here. It's like the one thing about a 10th team, if they go out east, if you go to out east has some brutal snow winters. It's If you ever look up
Yeah.
like videos of like Nova Scotia during the winter and they're dumping like 10 feet of snow into the ocean because of how
Yeah.
bad it gets out there, that would
Yeah.
not be fun. But
Yeah, I mean,
before
honestly, a temp team would be good. The league might need it, at least for scheduling purposes. But like you said, it's going to take somebody really wanting the temp team, or them convincing somebody that a temp team is even worth it.
yeah, I mean, hopefully with the new ownership in place in their three biggest markets, they can use that as kind of a jumping board to that 10th team.
Yeah, for sure.
But before I let you go, just a quick question. Some former Stampeders were pretty vocal about the situation in Calgary, kind of over around Grey Cup. I'm assuming
Mhm.
you heard some of the comments. Do you have anything to say? Because you were with them. You were part of that group. Do you have anything to say in regards to what was said, or is that a stone better left not turned?
No, honestly, I've already said a little bit of it previously, so I don't think I need to repeat it. And again, too, I will say I didn't disagree with nothing any of those guys are saying. And it's all a part of everybody's personal lived experience what was going through. But I do feel like once Huff retired and certain individuals left, certain coaches left, um, the culture did take a very heavy hit, right? And I think because so many people had got accustomed to what they always deem right the Calgary way, or that type of thing, it's no different than the New England Patriots, right? At some point, when there's certain key pieces who are not in the building anymore and not there, that accustomed way that everybody got used to, essentially it's not there anymore. Because the people who built it, the people who fostered it, the people who kept it alive and kept it going, they're not there anymore. Those are the people who really created that, right? And I think the problem is that there are certain individuals who thought they were a part of that, who thought they created that, who thought they fostered that, who stayed, and they really weren't. And then there were individuals who did create that and foster that and build it, who weren't there anymore, right? And you just look at the level, and it's right. A lot of the things they were saying was true. The level of talent that kind of passed through that building that they couldn't keep indoors because of the way they did business, it was going to come back to bite them eventually. The amount of, you know, players who experienced certain things, had certain conversations with certain individuals, and made them feel some type of way, it was bound to happen, right? I'm a firm believer in karma. And I feel like if you don't never have, if you don't put good things out there in the world and you don't do right by people, eventually, what's done in the dark is always going to come to light. So I think right now they're just kind of going through that phase of figuring out where they lost it, how do they pick it back up, who do we need to bring back in, or who do we need to bring back to find it, and or they just need to kind of just realize that they need to create their own identities and stop living in the past and stop trying to think that, what used to be done works in today's world. Because to be honest, society has changed. These young kids today, they don't think or are built like how my generation was or the generation prior to. Excuse me. And something that sparked that in me too was I saw Detroit's defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, right? He did his pivot interview, right? He kind of worded it out really like eloquently. But he would build connections with his players that players weren't common with seeing, from coaches, right? Everybody always has that, oh, players over here, coaches are over here. It's not meant to be meshed, or you know what I'm saying? Like everybody has to know the hierarchy, know their place, right? But we live in a different society, man. Honestly, cell phones, TikToks, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook has changed the way people think, how they view things, how they operate. It's not the same, right? it's kids aren't growing up with the same morals that certain people grew up with. The way things are being coached now, they aren't being coached at the same level. Like there's a lot of change that if you're a dinosaur and you get stuck in your old ways and you don't know how to assimilate to what the new regime generation or whatever is coming in, you're gonna struggle. It's just the reality of it, right? Like I feel like I have success in coaching is because my players, they look up to me. They because when I talk to them, I don't talk down to them. I don't talk at them. I talk at as a person like, hey, I've been through it. I've gone through it. I've dealt with certain things. Hey, I'm going to give you my shared life experiences. And whatever you do with that information, that's on you. All right. But I know I've been through enough that I know there's four ways to go down this path. If you go this way, this is what's going to happen to you. If you go this way, this is what's going to happen to you. But I ain't going to tell you not to go that way. I'm going to let you make that choice yourself. Right. And as a coach, my job is to be able to kind of not just build you up as an athlete, but build you up as a person, build you up as somebody who's going to be successful in life in general. I don't care just about the X's and O's. Now, you got coaches who care just about the X's and O's. They don't care about building a relationship with you. They don't care about, because again, you never know who you're going to bump into, who you're going to cross paths with in life, what they're going to be, what they're going to grow up to be, what they're going to do. You never know, right? That's why I've always been that type of person to where I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you do. I'm always going to have a conversation with you. I'm always going to stem myself. I'm always going to, you know what I'm saying? Like you and I, for instance, right? Who would have thought you would be able to just reach out to me and say, hey, Derek, can we have a chat? And I go, yeah, come on, man, no problem, right?
I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah. So that's just how I operate. So, yeah, man, honestly, maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they won't. Who knows? Right? But nah, what a lot of what they said, they weren't completely wrong. Um, I ain't gonna put no names on nothing. I ain't gonna put my own name on nothing, but I will say it wasn't it wasn't things said that wasn't warranted. I will say that.
That's fair. I mean, again, it's the behind the veil things that fans don't really see.
Yeah, nah.
So when
I mean,
it
I keep it
comes to
real.
light,
In Calgary, it was
people,
terrible. We didn't get no food. Food wasn't that good. You know, we always had to eat spolumbos after the game. It was cold. It was, like there are certain things like, and I've been around a lot of pro teams and a lot of facilities and a lot of things, right? There are certain places you're going to go and you're going to feel like, yeah, I feel like a pro football player. And then there are certain places you're going to go and you're going to go, I know I'm a pro football player, but it feels like I'm in junior college. It feels like I'm in, like I'm playing semi-pro. Like it just doesn't have that feel, right? So, um, again,
yeah,
like you said,
definitely.
it's
Yeah,
going
they
to take
didn't
some
do
private
well.
owners, investments. It's going to take, building the brand, right? I mean, the CFL is always going to have a lot of work to do. That's the reality of it. So, hopefully, they figure it out one day. Maybe they start bringing back the right people. Maybe they stop bringing some new blood for coaches. Maybe they bring in some fresh ideas. I think that's what helped BC. You brought in somebody who is a new owner, a new face, a new mind, new ideas, new enthusiasm, right? It takes stuff like that to be able to kind of get that push and that jolt that you need.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see what happens with the new commissioner and how that kind of takes over the next, like the future of the league, because that's going to be huge. We have there's the new TV
Yeah.
deal, like you said, there's going to be a large group of players who will stay, their entire college eligibility because of NIL, and they may just say, "Hey, I made my money in NIL. I'm not going to continue to play," which will add in a whole different dynamic of
Oh, for
recruiting
sure.
going forward.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So, and I appreciate you taking the time out to talk. It's always fun. It's nice to
Always,
get
man.
get some insight from a
I know,
player like
I know. Sometimes I get going and I kind of the wheels start turning. But yeah,
hey,
man, you know
I
me, man.
love it.
Anytime you need me, I'm there.
I love it. I mean, I talked to Dave Campbell earlier from Edmonton, and same thing. It was supposed to be about a half hour, and it ended up being about 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk during the season, and hopefully you're up. Maybe come up to Ottawa for one of the summer games.
I'm gonna definitely try to get to Ottawa during the summer. I love Ottawa, man. That was one
Ottawa's
of my favorite
such a
cities.
beautiful city, and I mean,
It is.
there's a lot of new things popping up in the city for young ones, and I know you got a couple of them. So if they were to come up, definitely things that they'd be able to enjoy throughout the trip.
Man.
So.
For sure, man.
I still need to
Still
need to send you my my jersey to get signed. Still have that.
Tell you what, man, I'll make it a point to try to get to Ottawa this summer so I can sign it in person for you, man. We can.
I appreciate that. Pretty sure I also have one of your CFL cards too, laying around here somewhere.
Whatever you got for me when I get a chance to see you, I'll make sure I get a John Hancock on everything for you.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, man. You have a good one, Shane.
You as well. See ya.